You can be forgiven for forgetting that we actually have a president and a government. It hasn't seemed like that for some time, but as the situation in America has gotten worse and worse, we do technically have a president. He has briefly, over the past few days, stuck his head up to comment on what was going on. But far from being any kind of unifier, he's only made it worse. Donald Trump tweeted back on May 30th, "Great job last night at the White House by the U.S. Secret Service. They were not only totally professional, but very cool. I was inside, watching every move, and couldn't have felt more safe." Well, that's what's important. "They let the protesters scream and rant as much as they wanted, but whenever someone got too frisky or out of line," that's how he speaks about people organizing to push for their rights, "they would quickly come down on them hard, didn't know what hit them," saying at some point, if they had breached the fence, they would have been greeted by the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt, at least. Something he talks about as if he is thirsty for it, not as, a tragedy to be avoided. So he was sitting in the White House as protests were going on around it, and threatening to unleash the most ominous weapons. I'm sure in a few hours he's going to pretend that he wasn't talking about killing the protesters, and right-wing media is going to pretend that they don't understand why anyone thought that's what he was implying. But that's what he's doing. When the looting starts, the shooting starts, wasn't clear enough, he's talking about letting loose dogs on people pushing for civil rights and unleashing military weapons on them.
Yeah, he's such a classless nerd, you know? He's just a nerd for violence and like mayhem. That's what he's doing. That's all. He's just like a fanboy of people being brutalized, and he's live tweeting it from the safety and comfort of the White House.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm really happy that people have taken these demonstrations to the White House,
Yes.
because he is also the emblem of the kind of white supremacist mentality that unfortunately undergirds a lot of police departments in this country and drives the dehumanization of Black Americans when they are confronted by police on some really stupid, dumb thing, like a $20 counterfeit, right?
Exactly.
And so, good. We should be taking this fight to all of our elected officials and especially to the president.
Exactly. Yeah, and I guess, although I have tried, I've kept 1% of my brain functioning constantly from the very beginning of his term, just focused on don't allow yourself to allow things to now seem normal that should not be. But even it's like, oh yeah, no, the president is tweeting that he might start firing on protesters. And that's the 10th biggest story of the weekend, is that he's doing that. Unleash the dogs, unleash the weapons. He's happy and sitting there. And honestly, the reason that can be a little bit normalized is because the more ominous thing for me is watching more and more people, regular Trump supporters, people, again, in the center who have a greater devotion to things being sort of quiet and seeming normal rather than being just. And people in the media who have apparently decided, no, fascist police state where we're murdering people in the streets. There are worse things, I guess. And isn't it a quick turn from right-wing media spent the last 2 months pretending that, like, dictators in office are taking away our rights, they're trampling our rights, it's a police state in Michigan, to immediately, no, cops should be killing people. They should really start shooting protesters in the streets. That was like a turn on a dime there. And not even commented on by the people making the turning.
Yeah. I mean, I would just ask everyone who is upset at some of the property destruction or fire being started, or some of the minority of protesters who turned and became violent with or without infiltrators, because we know that is real, both from the police side and potentially from the extreme right. But ask yourself, who has more of a responsibility right now to be peaceful, right? Is it the police? Is it the president? Or is it someone who's out of work who has not gotten a $1,200 stimulus check, or even with that can't make rent, whose landlord is bothering them to make payment, who doesn't have health care? Like, who has the responsibility to keep the peace? Who has the responsibility to show restraint right now? I'm going to go with the people whose tax dollars we fund, right? I'm going to go with the police. I'm going to go with the president. So if you're more upset at someone lighting fire to an Adidas store or a palm tree, than you are about the president inciting violence, that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah, and the media, like, it's been there's so many parts of this to talk about, but the
Yeah.
CNN has been, like, the media, by the way, is being targeted in a way that many of these reporters who are being attacked by cops on the streets have said they've reported from war zones around the world and not been targeted in this way, as
Right.
if by design, they are being attacked, and that's probably what it is. But even then, like, CNN's chyrons and headlines are all looters and stuff like you guys are on the streets, you see the violence being directed at these protesters, and still their knee-jerk reaction is to side with the narrative of those in power trying to crush this rebellion. And so, yeah, that's what we're seeing.
And it makes sense. I mean, we all know that, after in the later years of the Obama administration, there was investigations opened into local police departments from the Justice Department. That was scrapped. And then there also was sort of the blocking of new weaponry going to police departments because all of the stuff that we manufacture to be used abroad eventually comes back home to roost. All that violence and militarization comes back to our communities. And of course, the Trump administration say, nope, game on. We're not blocking any of those shipments of, whatever lethal / non-lethal, I don't know, poop your pants gun, because there's a poop your pants gun.
There is.
Or it's like a sound. Like,
Yeah.
whichever one of those, like, we want it, right? So again, all of these things and struggles are connected. And when I say we're giving too much to the military, I'm including the police.
Yeah. Yeah, and the investigations that have been going on for a long time into the infiltration or just open acceptance of white supremacists in police departments and the military is something that, as a country, we saw the news and we're like, that's probably fine. Let's not worry about that. That's not going to cause issues later on, and of course continues to. And you can see that. I mean, we can go quickly to... That's a police officer covering the protest, flashing a white power symbol. But as I tweeted, probably doing it ironically. It's probably just a joke. That's all.
Yeah,
And when
you're
the
saying
cops...
everything's okay.
Oh, totally. And when the cops tear down the American flag and put up a flag of veneration of cops above all else, at least they're being clear about what it is they're defending at that point.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing I was just going to mention is that we understand that there are very strong police unions that resist any kind of reform, and they have for years, and they should be targets of our pressure too, especially, for example, they resist things like mental health checks. Police officers saying, no, I don't need to check, and I'm not saying that they're unfit to serve or anything, but imagine being a cop is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Wouldn't you think that a basic mental health check or like visiting a therapist regularly, having someone check in on you, that would be good. We would want that for the armed arbiters of justice who patrol our streets every day. But no, the police unions make sure that they don't get that, just as I would say you should have a check on, hey, does this officer have white supremacist tendencies? Because that's not good. We should root that out. Yeah. But of course, I'm sure a union would be against that as well. Yeah. At least a police union.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.